Hello and welcome back to another video. This video may be the longest informational video to date, and it is about witch trials or witch hunts, whichever you prefer to call them. A witch hunt, trial, or purge is a search for people accused of witchcraft or a search for evidence of witchcraft. In medieval Europe, witch hunts often arose in connection to charges of heresy from Christianity. An extensive period of witch hunts occurred in Europe, and to a smaller extent in colonial America, from about 1450 to 1750. Witch hunts have also been reported in regions like Africa and Asia. The Derenburg Witch Trials took place in the country of Regenstein in the Holy Roman Empire in present-day Germany on October 1st, 1555. There are no official records and little documentation of these trials. They were made famous by a popular print. The print tells of two women who were burned on the stake in October 1555, one of which confessed to have been in a pact with Satan for 11 years. On October 12, 1555, the widower of one of the dead witches was executed for fornication and adultery with his late wife's sister. 2 days later, another woman was executed for having made a man lame and given him fever by burying a toad beneath his doorway. The Weisensteig witch trial happened in Weisensteig, Germany in 1562 to 1563. On August 3rd, 1562, a severe hailstorm extensively damaged the city, and the city's ruler, Count Ulrich von Halfenstein, blamed it on witches. Within a few days, several women were arrested and accused of witchcraft. 6 of the arrested women were executed as witches after confessions were tortured out of them. The total death count was in a pamphlet in 1563, which said that 63 witches and sorceresses were burned in Weisensteig. Weisensteig experienced more witch trials in 1583 with 25 deaths, 1605 with 14 deaths, and 1611 with 5 deaths. The Trier witch trials took place in the Catholic Diocese of Trier. In 1581, Johann von Schonenberg was appointed Archbishop of the Diocese of Trier. He ordered the purging of the Protestants, then the Jews, then the witches. Between 1587 and 1593, 368 people were burned alive for sorcery in 22 villages. And in 1588, 2 villages were left with only 1 female. Victims came from all sexes, ages, and classes. One of the victims was Dietrich Flade, who was opposed to the persecutions and doubted the use of torture. He was arrested, tortured, strangled, and burned, which stopped the opposition. Cornelius Loers tried to protest, writing a book about his views, but it was confiscated and he was arrested. In 1593, he was forced to make a recantation before the church. The St. Osyth Witches were 14 women who were tried for witchcraft in a village near Brightlingsea in Essex called St. Osyth in 1582. Ursula Kemp had a reputation for removing curses, which led Grace Thurlows to accuse her of witchcraft. Brian Darcy, Thurlow's employer, imprisoned Kemp. Her trial was in February 1582, her charges ranging from preventing beer from brewing to causing a death. She confessed to witchcraft and implicated others she knew. When the trial ended, Kemp was executed by hanging along with Elizabeth Bennet, who was found guilty of murdering 4 people and confessed to having 2 familiars. The Warboys witch trials occurred from 1589 to 1593 in the village of Warboys, England. The first allegations declaring Alice Samuel a witch were made in November 1589 by 9-year-old Jane Throckmorton, her 4 sisters, and 12 maidservants of the Throckmorton household, when they all started having fits of sickness. Apparently, they couldn't see, hear, or feel during the fits. In March 1590, Lady Cromwell, wife of one of the wealthiest commoners in England, came to Warboys to visit. Lady Cromwell and Alice Samuel had a conversation about the accusations. Lady Cromwell reportedly cut a lock of Alice's hair and gave it to Miss Throckmorton to burn. That night, Lady Cromwell had nightmares, became ill, and later died in 1592. Following the death of Lady Cromwell, Alice and her family were tried and hanged. The North Berwick Trials were held in 1590. More than 100 suspected witches in North Berwick were arrested. Several confessed due to torture that they met with the devil in churches at night. According to Christopher Smout, who is a Scottish historian, between 3,000 and 4,000 accused witches were killed in Scotland between 1560 and 1707. Shakespeare's Macbeth was influenced by several concepts of these witch trials. The Amersfoot and Utrecht witch trials took place in Amersfoot in the Netherlands from 1591 to 1595, with appeals and sentences in Utrecht. They resulted in the prosecution of 17 and the execution of at least 6 by strangulation and burning. Only a small amount of information is available on the witch trials in Orkney prior to 1612. The first 2 witch trials in Orkney were in 1594 and 1596. Admissions of guilty were integral, and torture was often used. A majority of trials were held in St. Magnus Cathedral, with prisoners potentially being held captive there. Convicted witches were executed on gallows ha. The most intensive period of these trials was from 1615 to 1645. If evidence didn't show signs of the devil, the courts would convict on tales of fairies. Witch trials continued in Orkney until 1708. The Peelland witch trials happened in 1595. Some of the accused were tested, known as the water test. During the water test, the accused were handcuffed and placed in a container of water. If they sank, they were released, but if they floated, they failed and were suspected of witchcraft. Those that failed were tortured, but they usually confessed before the torture. They were forced to name other witches. A total of 38 women and 2 men were accused in 3 months. Ultimately, 25 women were said to have died, 23 of whom were burned at the stake. The Basque witch trials represent the last attempt at rooting out supposed witchcraft from Moravia by the Spanish Inquisition. The trial began in January 1609 at Lorango, bordering Basque territory. Although the number of people executed was small, around 7,000 cases of supposed witchcraft had been examined by the Inquisition. The Bredevoort Witch Trials happened in Bredevoort in the Netherlands in 1610. They started with Jenneken ter Honk of Dinsperlo was accused of having caused the illness of livestock by using witchcraft. She was tortured into confessing and naming an accomplice. It kept going, and in 1610, 10 men and women were burned to death for execution. The trials of the Pendle Witches in 1612 are among the most famous and best recorded in English history. The 12 accused were charged with the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. The Pendle Witches were also tried with the witches Jane Southworth, Janet Brierly, and Ellen Brierly, accused of child murder and cannibalism, Margaret Pearson, who was facing her 3rd trial, this time for killing a horse, and Isobel Roby, who was accused of using witchcraft to cause sickness. 9 of the accused witches, Elizabeth Device, James Device, Anne Whittle, Anne Redfern, Alice Nutters, Catherine Hewitt, John Bulcock and Jane Bulcock were found guilty during a 2-day trial on August 18th and 19th and were hanged at Gallows Hill on August 20th, 1612. Elizabeth Southerns died while awaiting trial, and Alice Gray was found innocent. The Roermond Witch Trials took place in 1613 in and around the city of Roermond in the Spanish Netherlands. These trials are only known because of a pamphlet. 64 witches were arrested and burned at the stake. The trials were handled in a short period of time because over 600 newborn children and 400 old people, as well as over 6,000 animals, were supposedly killed by witchcraft. The Spa Witch Trials took place in the city of Spa in present-day Belgium in 1616. 14 women were judged guilty of witchcraft. The method of execution for witchcraft there was garroting and burning. The Northern Moravia witch trials happened in modern-day Czech Republic between 1622 and 1692. They are the largest and most well-known Czech witch trials. The Wurzburg witch trials took place from 1625 to 1631 and was one of the largest witch trials in history. The trials were initiated by Prince Bishop Philip Adolf von Derenburg. A special witch commission was organized to handle all cases of witchcraft. The commission used torture to force the accused to confess and name other witches. Those people would be arrested and tortured to name new accomplices, which caused a rapidly expanding number of arrests and executions, especially since the witch commission did not discriminate in who to arrest, but arrested men and women of all ages and classes. In the year 1634, a man and several women were put on trial in the city of Ramsele in Sweden. The man was said to have stabbed a knife in a wall and, uttering terrible prayers, milked the wall. It had been claimed that the women had used some small animals, hares, and unidentified creatures to milk cattle in their neighbor's barn. They were all likely beheaded and burned. The Vardo Witch Trials were held in Vardo in northern Norway in the winter of 1662 to 1663. 30 women were put on trial and accused of sorcery and making pacts with the devil. 1 woman was sentenced to a workhouse, 2 were tortured to death, and 18 were burned alive at the stake. The Torsaker Witch Trials took place in 1675 in the Torsaker parish in Sweden. These trials resulted in 65 women and 6 men being executed by being beheaded and then burned. In July 1682, a Bideford shopkeeper, Thomas Eachchurch, complained to some of the town's constables that Temperance Lloyd had been practicing witchcraft. She was arrested and locked at the end of a bridge, where she was kept until the trial. The charges were suspicion of using witchcraft on Grace Thomas and having familiarity with the devil. She was found guilty and executed. Mary Trembles and Susanna Edwards were investigated after Grace Barnes blamed Trembles for her illness. At the hearing, Grace's husband John accused Trembles of hurting his wife via witchcraft. Susanna's husband claimed to have overheard Susanna confess. They were both hanged. The Salem Witch Trials were from February 1692 to May 1693 in colonial Massachusetts. Betty Paris and her cousin Abigail Williams began to have fits described as beyond the power of epileptic fits or natural disease. The girls screamed, threw things around the room, uttered strange sounds, crawled under the furniture, and contorted themselves into peculiar positions. Other young women started to show similar behaviors. The first 3 women accused and arrested were Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba. Sarah Good was a destitute woman accused of witchcraft because of her reputation. At her trial, she was accused of rejecting Puritan ideals for self-control and discipline when she chose to torment and scorn children instead of leading them on a path of salvation. Sarah Osborne rarely attended church meetings. She was convicted of witchcraft because the Puritans believed she had her own self-interest in mind. Taituba was an enslaved South American Kalina woman from the West Indies. She was accused of attracting girls like Abigail Williams with stories of enchantment. These tales about sexual encounters with demons, swaying the minds of men, and fortune-telling were said to stimulate the imaginations of girls and made Taituba an obvious target of accusations. In the end, more than 200 people were accused. 30 people were found guilty, 19 of whom were executed by hanging. Giles Corey died under torture after refusing a plea, and at least 5 people died in the disease-ridden jails. The Islandmagee witch trials were in 1711 at Islandmagee. It is believed to be the last witch trial in Ireland. The trial was the result of Miss James Haltridge's claims that 18-year-old Mary Dunbar exhibited signs of demonic possession, such as shouting, swearing, blaspheming, throwing Bibles, going into fits every time a clergyman came near her, and vomiting household objects such as pins, buttons, nails, glass, and wool. Assisted by local authorities, Dunbar picked out 8 women she claimed were witches that had attacked her in spectral form. The 8 women were Janet Carson, Janet Latimer, Janet Main, Janet Linston, Janet Miller, Margaret Mitchell, Catherine McCalmond, and Elizabeth Seller. During their arrest, they were set upon by a mob, and one of the accused lost an eye. After the March 1711 trial and conviction of the 8, Dunbar had further attacks and blamed William Seller. Dunbar died in April, and Seller was tried and convicted in September 1711. Modern witch hunts surpass the body counts of early witch hunts. Most modern witch hunts take place in sub-Saharan Africa. Several African states, including Cameroon, re-established witchcraft accusations in their courts after their independence. After confessions, the accused or self-accused children were rewarded with large amounts of meat to induce a purifying vomit. According to a 1998 study, witch doctors have been used as expert witnesses in trials. In 2017, Cameroonian President Paul Biya had urged citizens to use witchcraft as a means of combating Boko Haram. In May 2008, Amnesty International reported that up to 1,000 people in Gambia had been abducted by government-sponsored witch doctors on charges of witchcraft and taken to detention centers where they were forced to drink a poisonous concoction at gunpoint known as kubajaro. On May 21, 2009, the New York Times reported that the witch-hunting campaign had been sparked by Gambian President Yahya Jammeh. The president continued a series of witch hunts over the next 7 years. Later, the Gambian government launched an investigation and opened a center to support the victims. Jammeh fled the country in 2017 after losing an election. Research on witch hunting in Ghana dates back to the earliest 20th century. A total of 8 sanctuaries for witch hunt victims were listed by the ethnologist Felix Riddell. In southern parts of Ghana, witch hunting as mass violence occurs, but far less frequently than in northern regions. In general, witchcraft accusations in southern Ghana today tend to stay peaceful, leading to the social isolation of the accused person. Kenya has a long covered history of witch hunts. In the past years, lynchings were a frequent feature of public violence. On May 21, 2008, it was reported that a mob had burned to death at least 11 people. The western region of Kenya is particularly known for witch hunts, and the district of Kisii has been labeled a sorcery belt. In this region, elders are often targeted and labeled as witches. Tanzania has seen some of the most intense witch hunts in Africa, with an estimated 20,000 people brought to death throughout the past 20 years. Black magic and witchcraft are feared, and not just for superstitious reasons. Incidents of abductions, maimings, and even bestial killings by witch doctors and their helpers are regularly experienced in Tanzania, where human body parts are used in some witchcraft rituals or as magic charms. Some people in India have the belief that witchcraft and black magic are effective. On one hand, people may seek advice from witch doctors for health, financial, or marital problems. On the other hand, people are accused of witchcraft and attacked, occasionally killed. In June 2013, the National Commission for Women reported that according to the National Crime Records Bureau statistics, 768 women had been murdered for allegedly practicing witchcraft since 2008 and announced plans for newer laws. Superstition and belief in magic is common in Indonesia. The collapse of the violent Suharto era in 1998 was accompanied by vigilante witch hunts and about 400 killings in the following years. The large-scale persecutions diminished since then, but accusations, witch hunts, and sometimes killings still occur regularly on a smaller scale in Indonesia. Witch hunts in Nepal are common and are targeted against low-class women. The main cause of witchcraft-related violence includes widespread belief in superstition. Though white magic is legal in Papua New Guinea, the practice of black magic is punishable by up to 2 years in prison. Reports by UN agencies show that attacks on accused witches are frequent, ferocious, and often fatal. About 150 cases of violence and killings are occurring each year just in the province of Simbu in Papua New Guinea alone. Reports indicate this practice of witch hunting has evolved into something malignant, sadistic, and voyeuristic. One woman, who was attacked by a young man from a nearby village, had her genitals burned and fused beyond repair by the repeated intrusions of red-hot irons. The 2012 Law Reform Commission claimed that few incidents are actually reported, so they concluded that the amount of incidents have increased since the 1980s. Neil L. Whitehead and Robin Wright presented a collection of essays on witch hunts among native tribes in the Amazon. While prevalent in many tribes, child witch hunts among Ashaninka have attracted interest and raised questions about methodical strategies in reporting abusive practices in an already biased environment. In 2017, an effigy to philosopher Judith Butler was burned as a witch while she helped organize a conference at a research organization in Sao Paulo, Brazil, called SESC. Butler was accused of witchcraft at a protest and was accused of trying to destroy people's gender identities and trying to undermine the values of the country. Witchcraft remains a criminal offense in Saudi Arabia, although the nature of this crime is not defined. The number of prosecutions for this country as a whole are unknown. In November 2009, it was reported that 118 people had been arrested in the province of Makkah that year for practicing magic and using the Book of Allah in a derogatory manner. In 2009, the Human Rights Watch claimed that prosecutions for witchcraft and sorcery had been making a rapid increase, and Saudi courts are sanctioning a literal witch hunt by the religious police. Witch hunts against children appear in the early ethnographic literature and in many modern circumstances. In Cameroon, DRC, Ghana, and Brazil, sporadic child witch hunts have a tradition of at least 100 years. In the past 20 years, an unprecedented increase in child witch hunting has been noted in southern Nigeria, DRC, Angola, Ghana, and other sub-Saharan regions. Several sources estimate around 40,000 children in Kinshasa alone were victims of child witch hunts. Act 41 in the laws of Pennsylvania from 1860 is about witchcraft and fortune-telling. Here are the laws. Section 215. Who shall pretend, for gain or lucre, to predict future events by cards, tokens, the inspection of the head or hands of any person, or by anyone's age, or by consulting the movements of the heavenly bodies, or who shall, for gain or lucre, pretend to effect any purpose by spells, charms, necromancy, or incantation, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, punishable by any court of quarter sessions in this Commonwealth, with the fine and imprisonment, or both, or either, at the discretion of the court. The first offense shall be punished by with not more than 2 years imprisonment, nor less than 15 days, and a fine of no more than $100, nor less than $10. The second offense, with any term of imprisonment and fine not exceeding 5 years or $500, as the court may deem proper. Section 216. Whoever shall pretend, for lucre or gain, to tell fortunes or foretell future events, by other means than those aforesaid, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, to be prosecuted in this Commonwealth, and to be punished as provided in the section 1st of this Act. Section 217. If any person or persons shall publish by card, circular, sign, newspaper, or any other means whatsoever, that he or she shall or will predict future events, the said publication may be given in evidence to sustain an indictment under the first and second sections of this Act. Section 218. Any person whose fortune may have been told, as aforesaid, shall be a competent witness against all persons charged with any violations of the provisions of this Act. Section 219. Any person or persons who shall advise the taking or administering of what are commonly called love powders or potions, or who shall prepare the same to be taken or administered, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and shall be punished as is provided in Section 1 of this Act. Section 220. Any person or persons who shall pretend, for lucre or gain, to enable anyone to get or recover stolen property, or to tell where lost articles or animals are, or to stop bad luck, or to give good luck, or to put bad luck on any person or animals, or to stop or injure the business of any person, or to shorten the life of any person, or to give success in business, enterprise, speculation, lottery numbers, or games of chance, or win the affections of any person whatever for marriage or seduction, or to make one person marry another, to induce any person to alter or make a will in favor or against any one, or to tell the place where treasure, property, money, or valuables are hid, or to tell the place where to dig or search for gold, metals, hidden treasures, or any other article, or to make one dispose of property, business, or any valuable thing in favor of another, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, punishable under the provisions of this Act in any court of quarter sessions, and the party or parties who may have consulted such persons as have pretended to do any acts aforesaid shall be competent witnesses in all proceedings for the breach or breaches of this Act. I talked about those Pennsylvania laws because this brings us into the next topic, which is known as the Hanover Witch Trials. A few days after Beck Lawrence, owner of the Serpent's Key shop and sanctuary, was profiled in a business newsletter talking about the tarot card readings offered at the shop in Hanover, Pennsylvania. Police Chief Chad E. Martin, along with another officer, stopped by for a visit. They entered the shop at around 11:36 a.m. on October 5th, 2023. Beck asked if they would consent to the conversation being recorded for legal purposes, and was told by Chief Chad Martin that he did not consent to that. In response, Beck stated that they would not be talking to them without their legal counsel. Chief Chad Martin claimed to want to have an adult conversation, but settled on verbally telling them about the law and that the disclaimers placed around the store were not likely to hold up in court. The police didn't press charges or fine Beck, but they said that if they got any complaints or reports, they would be investigated. The law in reference is Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 7104, written on June 6th, 1973, which is just a revised version of Act 41 and the laws of Pennsylvania from 1860, which I read earlier. Beck consulted a lawyer. the lawyer said that Beck's First and 14th Amendment rights had been broken. So after a bunch of legal letters back and forth, Beck was able to file a 19-page lawsuit against the Hanover Borough Police Department for violating Beck's First Amendment rights. This is a big first step in Beck's legal battle. From day one, Beck has been actively informing people via their social media accounts when possible. The situation received so much attention that on October 5th, 2023, the Hanover Borough Police Department released a statement on Facebook basically recounting the encounter from Chief Chatty Martin's point of view. They limited who could comment on the post, which they had not done before. So community members commented on older Hanover Borough Police Department posts, asking the department to explain their behavior in visiting the Serpent's Key, but there was no response from the police. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I have Beck's socials linked in the description of this video. I also have linked their petition to challenge the constitutionality of Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 7104. I'll see y'all next time, and have a great day.